Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another PBALC informational live stream. As always, we want to thank Frost Bank for sponsoring our 2024 informational live streams this year. Well, our focus for today's informational live stream is civics literacy. So what is civics literacy, you might ask? In the most basic form, basic literacy is helping our students nurture their understanding of democratic principles, developing their confidence and skills to advocate for themselves and their beliefs, and engaging them in public discourse and to be able to contribute to the betterment of society. And today we want to welcome Karmen Bryant with the League of Women Voters to discuss civics literacy. Welcome, Karmen. We are so happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Absolutely. Well, can you start by telling our viewers and followers about yourself and your role at the League of Women Voters and what exactly the League of Women Voters is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been involved with the League of Women Voters probably about 20 years now, and I really want to give them a shout out. They are an excellent resource for information, and I think what makes them so special is they're not always so, it's kind of like they start at the 101 and they're not way on down the road. So if you are new, if you're maybe younger, really kind of trying to figure out the system, the League is a great place to start. And I am a member of the League. Of course, we have Texas and then we have US as well. So just a wealth of information to be gained from that group.
Awesome. So why do you think that civic literacy and a discussion of civic literacy is important for people to stay informed and knowledgeable about the issues facing our country?
Absolutely. So, of course, we're coming up on, this isn't a small election year, this is a big election year. And so we're going to determine the next president of the United States. So we really need to, I'm sure it's kind of like, unless you live under a rock or I don't know, you probably know that we're going to be having an election in November. So I think it's so important just to become a well-informed, active citizen. And it gives you really the opportunity to just change the world. And I know a lot of people think, oh, my vote isn't going to count or whatever that is. But I'm also thinking, we can go all the way to the presidential election, but we can also start with smaller elections right here in our hometown or wherever you might be. But your one vote absolutely will change. And so just being really, really informed on what's going on in your town, in your country, in your world is so important. And it equips people with knowledge for their future.
Absolutely. And so let's start with the 101s, as you said. Sure. Who is eligible to vote in the United States? And take us through what the voter process in the United States looks like. Like, do you have to register to vote and et cetera?
Right, absolutely. So, another great resource for people that, again, might be younger or new to this area, your local election office is also a plethora of information. So in the US, you must be a citizen, and you must meet your state residency requirement. I've been seeing a lot of actually a lot about homelessness and still the ability to vote. So if you're homeless, that does not mean that you cannot vote, which is interesting. And I've been seeing more and more about that. I think because that's such an issue facing our country today. Another important thing is that you must be 18. But you can register to vote before you turn 18. I believe it's 3 months before. So if you're 17, you want to vote, your birthday is coming up before the election, then absolutely go ahead and register to vote. And there are also voter registration deadlines. Of course, we need to get all of that in before the deadline, so they know so they can send you your card. So basically, you go and you apply for a card. I believe you can do it online now as well. And so you will receive, hopefully, a paper confirmation in the mail, and you take that and your driver's license when you go to vote. You can always look online to see where the polling places are. But usually the local election office is one. There's something called early voting as well. And I like to talk about having a voting plan. And a lot of people think, oh, I'm going in and I'm just going to vote on, one or two issues. Well,
Yeah.
if you're educating yourself, which they have sample ballots online, usually specific to where you live, you can go and look that up. Usually the elections office posts that. But they might have amendments, or they might be asking opinions about future laws. And so really it's not just about voting for one thing. So usually put a lot of information on there. So having a voting plan, and you can, of course, get more information on that. There's Vote 411, which is a league website, and we can go over some resources coming up. But voters guides, forums. I know PBS locally does a fantastic job with their forums. So anyway, we can get into that a little more if you want to later.
Yeah, it's so important to be able, because people think, oh, I'm just going to go vote for so and so that's running for mayor, or so and so that's running for Senate, or something like that. Right. And then you get there and you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was going to vote.
Exactly.
I'm going to vote for this amendment. I have no idea how to vote for this amendment.
Right.
So make sure that you look up that ballot and see everything that you're going to be voting for.
Absolutely.
So that you're well informed and vote the way you want to vote.
Yes.
And so
they can sometimes write them tricky. So your homework it's
yes. Yes. The way sometimes the amendments are written, just make sure that you understand what the amendment's saying.
Right. Absolutely.
So one question that we may get is, okay, so I go and vote at an election office. Where do I find those election offices?
So I hate to keep saying go to the website, but our actual election office is at the county annex, which is on A Street and Scarborough Draw, and they are so county is where you would go. And they're just really well informed, and they can definitely, I'm sure they have lists of polling sites coming up. Is that sample ballots? You can usually register to vote there. So really, I mean, it's a wealth of knowledge and information. And I will also say, if you're really interested in learning more about this, that's a great place to volunteer as well. They're always looking for people to help with elections. It doesn't mean you have to run the whole thing, but if you want to go and help register voters for a day, or if you want to go and actually help them when it's time to do the voting, they always need
at the polling sites.
So,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's a great way to learn,
Absolutely. And so if you want to register to vote, probably the easiest way would be to do it online. But if you're not comfortable navigating, if you don't have good digital literacy skills, you can easily find an election location. And I would think the best way to find that is think about where you go, kind of pay your gas bill, or, things like that. And that's usually the building where you can go and register to vote in person.
Right. Absolutely.
And so how do you think understanding democratic principles such as voting and the elections and things like that help both children and adults develop confidence and skills?
I love this question, because I think it really kind of makes us think maybe a little deeper. And again, like, why does our one vote count? But really being informed. Democracy is the best form of government for ensuring peace and sustainable development, human progress. And it's rooted in recognition of human rights. So if you know your rights, that automatically builds your confidence, and that you're doing things by the book and by the law. So I think it's a really, really great question. I think there is human fellowship around democracy as well, and just discussing your viewpoints. And we are so divided in this country, and I really hope that we can get back to civil discussion. It's so important. That's something that I actually had down is working on these. I mean, if you're volunteering or working in the election office or whatever it is, really having a discussion is how we learn from each other. And that, again, builds our confidence and sense of community.
Well, learning from each other, whether you agree with your views or you agree with my views, is, seeing the other's point of view.
Right.
You're learning something. You're learning something new. And also, the more you learn, the better you can advocate for yourself and for your beliefs, right?
Absolutely.
So that builds confidence.
Absolutely. Yes.
So,
And something else is you're voting where your dollars go. We have a lot of our we vote for people most of the time. Sometimes we vote for amendments like we talked about, but really, we're voting for where our dollar goes through who we elect. So that's an important one.
So it's always when you start talking dollars, people start to listen, right? So how can we educate the public on the value of taking an active role in the civic process? Because there seems to be so many, especially the younger generation, they're unengaged and they say, "Oh, my vote won't count. I'm not going to vote." They kind of have that attitude, and I tell them, "Oh, like, if you vote, politicians tend to behave better."
Yes,
because you're holding them accountable.
Absolutely.
And if you don't vote, you're going to have to follow the laws, regardless if you vote or not. The laws of whoever is in office.
Right.
And we want to vote for competent people that, to have more positive outcomes.
Right.
And so every vote does count.
Every vote counts, indeed. I'm reminded of, and I don't know what the skew really of the demographic who watches these for you guys, but I'm thinking about the Al Gore and George Bush. That's been several years ago, but the one vote and the hanging Chad. So if you're not familiar with that, that's always a good story politically to realize, oh my goodness, yeah, maybe my vote really does count. So I think, engaging young voters, I think that we're doing a great job actually of putting information out there. I know political signs, political ads, obviously social media.
And like you mentioned, the PBS stations in your local PBS stations, your local public radio stations do a great job of always having panel discussions of who's running and what, forums of what amendments or what laws are trying to be passed. So, and PBS and public radio are free. So you can't say, oh, I don't have cable or anything like that. They're free to viewers to watch. So
That's right. And I think that's it's such a good stepping point. And I think as we do get older, we tend to sometimes maybe start to focus a little more on the democratic process, which is fine. I think the information is there if you want to seek it out. So I think these are great ways to start engaging if people are interested. You don't have to know. That's my biggest thing. You don't have to know everything to be political. You don't want to have to run for president of the U.S. If that's not what you want, you can start small. So just information, just seeking information.
And first major step in being engaged in civics literacy and in public discourse is to vote. So make sure and vote, and don't remove that attitude of my vote doesn't count, because everybody's vote does count. And essentially, when you're declining to vote, you're letting other people make that decision for you, and you just don't want that.
No, you don't. Actually, that reminds me, without going into too big of a history lesson, but there are people in this country who fought for the right to vote. And so we never,
Exactly.
never want to go back to where we were. So it is so important that you exercise your right.
And we obviously serve a lot of immigrants and refugees, and in some of their home countries, they don't have the right to vote, where their vote doesn't literally count. And
Exactly.
so we are so blessed in the United States to be able to have that right to vote and to have a democratic process. So don't
Absolutely.
take that for granted.
No, no. So true. So true.
And so we know, as you briefly mentioned this, that civics literacy is way more than just voting and listening to politicians and politics. Can you give our followers and viewers other examples of active citizenship, such as like volunteering, community projects, things like that?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to say is just really being an active citizen. I mean, it can start with helping your neighbor. I mean, as simple as that,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we can go all the way up to, I know, protests, sometimes maybe not in our area, but in the US, protest, if you want to take it all the way to from one extreme of helping your elderly neighbor, maybe take out their trash, to
Mm-hmm.
going protesting for what you believe. But that's when action happens, so don't be afraid to do that either. um, Active citizens debate, they engage in discussions like we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They speak out against hatred and injustice and inequality, which is a big one in our country right now.
Yep.
Offer your own ideas, and formulate your own ideas. That's active citizenship. Not just because my aunt told me I needed to do this. Really,
Mm-hmm.
your own opinions, and that's an okay thing to do. Um, I know you can always go to city council meetings here, and engage in public meetings, engage in social groups, committees. Um, there are really so many things, and it's just really
And if, like you
taking.
said, if like the basics form being helping your neighbor, volunteering, contributing to the betterment of society by doing that. And like I said, civics literacy is not just voting in elections and things like that, but volunteering with nonprofits, volunteering with the food bank, volunteering with, your local organizations, or just, helping neighbor
That's right.
helping
That's
your
right.
neighbor.
You never underestimate the power of kindness to another.
Absolutely. Okay, and lastly, want to share resources. So where can people find information about registering for voting, elections, ballots, and things like that?
Sure, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I want to again tell you about your local election office, in person and also online. They will have sample ballots if you are a little lost or don't know how to answer your voter registration card, which isn't hard. Don't let me scare anybody away. But sometimes,
Mhm.
you think, oh, which box is it? So they're a wealth of information and knowledge. Also wanted to shout out to vote411.org, which is League of Women Voter website. They should help you with a voter plan. The league also puts out a voter guide, which is very, very helpful. There's Vote Texas. Texas Tribune is another great website that I love, and they are, I think, pretty down the middle as far as issues. So that's a great place to check out too.
And I know, I just recently saw a post from the League of Women Voters, and they have, I think they're doing posts of like, what is a Texas Supreme Judge, and they just kind of run down
Perfect.
basic what a Texas Supreme Judge is,
That's
what is a senator, what is a congressman, and so that is so, follow League of Women Voters website for your younger folk.
Yes, yes. Well, you're
and
younger, and I'm like,
I don't know either.
I didn't always use a
I'm like, what
refresher.
are the branches of? I name a couple of them. And finally, any advice on simple ways for people to stay informed about politics without getting overwhelmed, because there's a lot of information right now
There
because
is a
it's
lot of
election
information.
year.
And I think again, that's kind of the beauty of this discussion today is really starting at the 101 and not to feel
Hmm.
overwhelmed by it,
Yeah.
because you can take it, like I said, all the way from helping your neighbor to going out and protesting, or running for office. I mean, you can take it from one extreme to another. So it's really your comfort level, and your interest. But there is
Hmm.
information out there. You might have to dig a little bit to find it, but it's really it's where your comfort level is, and just being educated about what's going on around you. And it really,
Hmm.
we go back to that confidence question, because it really does, help you stay informed, help you stay up with the times, have conversations with people that know what's
Exactly.
happening. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. And so I would say I would recommend, first thing, register to vote and then vote.
Yes.
Start there. And then if you want to get further engaged, you're welcome to do that. Run for mayor, run for senator position or
Right.
your local representative. But if you're like, oh no, I don't want to do that, just register to vote and vote. Those are very important, especially this year.
Absolutely.
uh, well, thank you so much, Karmen, for joining us today and providing us with some civics literacy education. It's much needed, especially this year. Make sure that you register to vote, go out and vote, and stay informed. Like I said, League of Women Voters, and I think you said Vote 411 are two excellent sites to get information. And I think probably you can look up election um, areas or where you can register to vote there as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
And most importantly, go out and vote November the 5th, and make your vote count.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add, Karmen?
I don't. Thanks so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll see everyone next time for another PBALC live stream.